before the bells began, before the city learned the shape of its own grief. The morning in the Red Keep had the texture of something sticky and half-cooled. Wax on a tabletop, sweat drying on the forearm, the breath of a candle before it smokes. Eddard Stark sat awake to greet it, not because he wished to but because sleep had refused him with that unkindness only feverish nights know how to show. The parchment lay on the table where he had left it, and though he had read it a dozen times, in torchlight and lamplight and the sift of a gray dawn, his eyes went to it again. The words did not change. They never would. In the close room, where the luster of polished oak turned the color of an old coin, where the window swore to a city that had not yet fully woken, the king's hand rested on the king's words, and the king was already more silenced than man. He could hear the sea in the distance, beyond the walls and the tangle of streets and the long red ribbon of the river. It came to him like the breath under a door, a constant hush that was both comfort and reminder. There had been nights in his youth on campaign with Robert, when that sound meant safety. The fleet at anchor, smashed drums of wine rolling in the surf, palm fronds beating like banners. He tried to set his mind upon that memory, to place himself on some forgotten strand where laughter was still simple and death had not yet learned his voice. The mind obeyed only so long as memory could pretend. Then it drifted back to the parchment that lay like a bar of iron. You will serve as protector. The wax was already cracked from where he had broken it in haste. The seal, the crowned stag, lay in two halves set close so that they could be joined again in the mind's eye. That was the way of things. Broken and set together, held by recollection because nothing else could hold. When the door opened behind him, he did not turn. Not at once. He knew the footfall and the click of the silk-corded mantle. Varys moved like a thought you did not wish to have. "You are awake early, my lord," said the eunuch softly. "Or perhaps you are awake still." Ned let his palm flatten upon the parchment, then released it. The letter had weight even when you did not hold it. "Robert is dead," he said. The words sounded wrong to his own ears, too blunt and too simple, as if naming the thing could make it real. There had been a time when he had believed words had such power. "He died in the night. So the bells will say," Varys murmured. "And the bells are always truthful in their fashion. They do not ring for chance." Ned looked up then. There was no triumph in Varys's face, no sorrow either. The master of whisperers wore the expression of a man who has put aside the luxury of feeling. He carried both hands before him as if to show they were empty, though Ned knew that emptiness was an art and therefore a kind of possession. "Who else knows?" he asked. "A few. The Grand Maester, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, the Queen." There was the slightest elegance of pause before the last word, like a finger that tests the edge of a hidden blade. Lord Renly knew he had not many hours before him. He stood watch for a while. "He has retired, or so his men say." "And Littlefinger?" Ned asked. The name slid out without his fuller willingness, as a bead of condensation slips down a glass, inevitable by its own nature. "Lord Baelish is never far from a ledger," Varys said. The corner of his mouth made a movement that hinted at amusement and then denied it. "And a ledger is never far from a door that does not quite close. He has many accounts to reconcile, my lord. He counts coppers very well. He counts other things equally well." Ned rose. His leg had improved with the poultice, but a stiffness remained that made the first steps an argument. He bore the pain with quiet, as he had always done. Pain was not a stranger. It was a neighbor whose fence he had mended for years without liking the man any better. "Send to Janos Slint," he said. "Have him bring the watch to the gates of the Red Keep and stand to. I want no wandering through the corridors once the bells begin. And send for Lord Baelish to attend me. There are accounts I would see." "The city watch?" Varys blinked. The lashes met and parted like fans. "They will want silver for being woken so early. They always do." "They will have it," Ned said, and picked up the cracked seal with an oddly tender thumb and forefinger, as if it were the shard of some bowl his mother might have used. He felt something that might have been shame, though not for the paying of bribes. He had learned that a city was like a horse weary from being driven too hard. The hand upon the reins had to be soft, or it would gnash the bit and bleed from its tongue. He had not come here to learn gentleness toward men who did not deserve it, but he had learned gentleness toward a kind of world he did not yet know how to refuse. Varys inclined his head. "As my lord commands." Then, with one foot still half behind the threshold, he said, "You have friends among those who love law more than they love crowns. There may be use in them." "Ser Barristan," Ned said and nodded. A promise formed in his mind and settled there. Law, not appetite. He thought of Robert's hand, heavy and warm when they were boys, gripping him around the neck in drunken affection and dragging him into the tent where jest and boast were as plentiful as flies. He thought of Robert's hand in the end, colder and weak, smelling of wine and wet leather and the sickness that had come from the boar's tusks. Protector, he read again without reading. Protector. He would not protect crowns that did not fit. He would protect what they were meant to shelter. Varys bowed himself away. Ned moved to the window and pulled open the shutters. Morning came in raw, showing a city that did not want to be seen so early. The roofs wore dew like the suffering after a feast. Far off where Sep's pale dome should catch the sun. The horizon was a bank of steel. The day would be hot on the city and cool on the bay, the worst kind of day for patience. He heard someone in the corridor outside, not hurrying and not idling. Alan opened the door without knocking and took in the room with that quick eye Ned valued, the quickness that had nothing of fear in it. "My lord," Alan said. "Full harness," Ned told him. "You and Tomard, Harwin, Jax. Tell Jory's lads they are not to leave the tower. No one is to wander. We will have visitors. Janos Slint will come. Lord Baelish as well." He did not add, "if he lives." He did not permit himself divination, even that kind which merely named a wish on a hope. Alan grunted what might have been approval. "The city's beginning to stir," he said. "But no bells yet." "They will," Ned said. He went to the table and took the parchment. He had the odd sensation that if he put it anywhere but within his own belt, it would float away like a leaf on a canal. He slid it into the fold where his jerkin crossed and tied the thong. He wondered, absurdly, if parchment could sweat. Alan watched the process with the wordless calm of a man counting doors. "And the girls?" he asked. "Sansa will be sent for by the queen." Ned hesitated. Words were not the only forms of unkindness. They did not alone bear the burden of being true. Keep her to her rooms. If the queen's women come, they are to be told she is indisposed. Arya, he paused again. Arya was a small question that constantly sought a larger answer. Arya is to stay with Syrio. Tell him to keep his lesson long. Long lessons can leave bruises, Alan said and almost smiled. She will be pleased. She will be safe, Ned corrected gently. Safety was not Arya's joy, but it would be her gift today whether she liked it or not. Go! Alan went, moving with the spare grace of a man who knew how to be present and absent almost at once. Ned returned to the window and stood with his hands on the sill. The river was a color that only rivers in a city take after a long summer. A spiteful green with a topcoat of gold where the light struck it, as if beauty could be skimmed with a shallow bowl and the rest left thick. He tried to imagine Winterfell as it must be at this hour, the air holding the cold like a memory it had not yet had time to lose. He thought of stone that did not sweat, and of a courtyard where the only heat came from the forge and the kitchens. He allowed himself that thought, just for the time it takes a hawk to scar the sky with its flight. When the bells began at last, their first peal was low and slow enough that for a moment he mistook it for thunder. The second bell insisted. The third made insistence a habit. The city listened and changed its breathing to meet the message. Ned heard doors open in the barracks below and the scrape of boots. From the lower terraces came a sound like a flock of birds rising all at once. That thin, startled cry that is half shape and half absence of shape. Robert is dead, the bells told fishwives and fence-menders and men who hauled water. Robert is dead, the bells told the rooms where dice still warmed hands and the alleys where children shed their shirts and pretended the puddles were ponds. Bells say the same thing to everyone and mean 100 different things in 100 small rooms. Ned had learned that listening to them was like listening to the inside of one's own mouth. He moved for the door. The long corridor had torches set in iron brackets at intervals, but their flames looked forlorn in the daylight that had begun to bleed into everything. Ser Barristan was already there, in white as if the moon had mistaken the hour and walked the hallway. The old knight looked older today, though he stood straight as a pike. His cheeks had the paper-thin quality of a man who has not slept and will not admit it. "My Lord Hand," he said, bowing with a formal kindness that honored the dead by its lack of haste. "If you will." "In time," Ned said. He looked past him and saw the different shadows. Pycelle was not present, nor Renly, nor the other. Littlefinger was not in the corridor. Ned felt his fingers curl as if remembering the weight of a sword. "Has the Queen been told?" he asked. "She has," Barristan said. "She sent her prayers to the Mother and her message to the Masters of Ceremony. The small council is to gather in the throne room within the hour." "Within the hour," Ned repeated. The hour had already begun to eat itself. He nodded to Barristan. "Sir, I will walk with you." They set out, the white of the King's Guard and the subdued steel of the Hand's Guard making a path that the servants along the wall were careful not to interrupt. The castle was beginning to tilt toward crisis. It would be around corners first, then in open ways, then everywhere. Ned had seen battle creep up on men like that too, being nothing, then being more than what they could carry. "Robert died as he lived," Barristan said softly, with the taste of wine on his tongue and a jest that was not quite kind. "He died with a will in his hand," Ned said. "He named me protector until his heir comes of age." He had not intended to say it yet, not even to Barristan, but the words came because they needed to exist out loud. Barristan's eyes met his for the briefest time. If there was relief there, it was so carefully contained that it might only have been the reflection of a torch. "There is law," the old man said. "There is precedent. The city has lived through deaths before." It was not the deaths that frightened cities, Ned thought. It was births. What was to be born today would determine how the city woke tomorrow and in 100 tomorrows after that. They crossed a courtyard where the rare shade made the air stand still. The marble of the paving stones radiated yesterday's sun, as if it had stored it for just such a morning of bell song. Ned saw two of Slint's men at their post near a small postern and nodded to them. Their halberds were held as if they were waiting for them to become something else, as if the wood might sprout leaves or teeth. In the dazzle of the day rising past the walls, he saw the barest film of sweat on the steel gorgets. He knew that smell. The metal and the man mingled. He could have found his way to a smithy with his eyes closed on that scent alone. The throne room was already a gathering. Pages ran fly-like among the larger beings. A few lords and ladies had come as if pulled by the thread of the bells. Lady Tanda stood like a loaf left too long in the oven, her maid at her elbow to prevent her from crumbling entirely. Ser Boros and Ser Marin flanked the dais in their white cloaks, all marble above and calcified ferocity below. Cersei Lannister stood at the foot of the steps, a figure of contained fire. She was dressed in a red that made the cloth seem wet, and her hair glowed like a thing that gives light at the bottom of the sea. Beside her stood Joffrey with his chin set to be a weapon. Tommen had one hand on his mother's gown, his face tremulous in a way he could not hide by trying to be still. Myrcella, more composed than her brothers and perhaps more composed than most grown women would be at her age, had the tilt of her head that said she had practiced it. There were two Lannister guards standing as if they had been grown out of the base of the steps. Ned's eye met Cersei's head-on with the candor of a man who had nothing left to pretend. Pycelle waddled toward them as if he were his own parade. His chain made a tired sound, the clink of coins spent too often. "My Lord Hand," he wheezed. "A sorrowful morning indeed." "The king is dead," Ned said. "Prepare to read his will." "Certainly," Pycelle said, and the syllables slipped away from him as if he had meant to cradle them and instead let them fall. Littlefinger arrived while Pycelle was fumbling with his parchments. Peter Baelish did not walk like other men. He came into the room as though it were already telling a story about him. The corners of his mouth held the idea of laughter. His eyes offered friendship and hid abacus beads behind it. He inclined himself a measure, just far enough to complete the shape of courtesy and no further. "Lord Stark," he said pleasantly, "a grim morning. The city will weep until it remembers it does not know how." Ned felt something steady settle within him, which surprised him. He had expected a flare of anger, or perhaps caution that tasted of lemon rind. What came was a steadiness like a rock catching itself before it rolls. "Lord Baelish," he said, "we will speak after." Baelish's mouth confessed that he understood requests and the places below them where meaning lived. "Of course," he said. Then he moved to stand near the base of the steps, not with Cersei but as if the geometry of the room wanted him to complete some shape there. He placed one hand lightly on the pommel of the slender dagger at his belt. The gesture was careless. Careful men perform careless gestures well. Varys appeared as if he had already been there and merely needed to be noticed. Renly came in with two of his own men and the fine green of a storm-swept hillside in his clothing. His expression was very smooth, like a lake that has not yet decided if it will offer reflections or hide them. Ser Barristan took his place with the other white cloaks. Janos Slynt entered with 4 men and the particular swagger of someone who wears steel and eats on benches where others stand. The throne, iron, ugly, and theatrical, loomed over all of it like the snare that it was. Pycelle eventually achieved his victory over the ribbon and wax. He cleared his throat in the way of a man who has used his throat as an instrument for a profession and grown proud of the rasp. "By the letters and hand of his grace, King Robert of House Baratheon," he trembled, "I am instructed to read." Cersei did not move as he began. Her face, for all its beauty, had lines carved into it today that no paint could smooth. Not from age, but from will. She held Joffrey's hand. No, it was wrong to say she held it. She permitted his fingers to touch her as if love were a favor granted. Ned watched her while Pycelle droned the formal opening and the praises for the king's wisdom and the litany of his titles. He did not look away when Pycelle reached the passage that mattered. "And until such time as my heir is of sufficient years to take up the burden of this my office, I name and command Eddard, Lord Stark, Warden of the North, as protector of the realm and regent in my stead." The words landed like stones in a dish. The room made one sound together and then many little sounds apart. Renly's eyes flickered with something Ned could not read yet. Hope, perhaps, or calculation. Slynt looked between faces as if one of them might open like a little larder door and show him what he should do. Cersei smiled without showing teeth. "Pycelle," she said in a voice that had the softness of grape flesh and the hardness of the seed within it, "we thank you for your faithful service. You may sit." She lifted the parchment with a careless hand that knew exactly how to be careless, as if she were taking up a cheap piece of cloth. She tilted it to see the seal. She said, and tore it in two where the wax had already split. The sound was small but as insolent as the first step a horse takes out of his master's reach. She gave the halves to a hovering page. "Kindling," she instructed. Ned had known this would come. He did not draw breath with outrage he could not afford. "You mistake yourself," he said evenly. "This is the king's will." "This is a piece of parchment," Cersei said. Her eyes were green the way sea ice is green. "My son is king. He needs no nurse." "The law is blunt," Barristan said into the space that had opened. His voice the same measured steel he used to name the parts of a sword. "It is no nurse. It is the spine of the realm. The law is a net that catches the unwary and misses the rest," Cersei replied without looking at him. "My son will sit the throne as his blood demands." She moved one step up the stair. The Lannister men behind her took the shift of weight as if it were a drumbeat. Baelish let his eyes flick to them and back, noting a tempo others might miss. Ned looked to Janos Slynt. "You will bring a detachment of your men and place them between the lords and the queen," he said. His voice had the simple command of a man who has given and received orders until the act was as natural as walking. Slynt blinked as if the words were light in his eyes. "My lord," he said, not unwilling, only slow. "Do it," Ned said. You will also ensure the doors are kept. No one leaves. No one enters without my word. The city will have calm, or it will have you to answer to." Slint's lips formed the beginnings of a grin that he hid in deference. He gestured. For men became 8. Halberds came down to the ground like opinions being stated in a long council. The sound of ironclad footfalls is a language. It said that circumstance had decided to be weighed again. Cersei's nostrils flared very slightly. "You presume much, Northern Lord," she said. Her gaze did not check itself upon Ned. It went over him, through him, around, like a hawk's. "And you forget yourself before your betters." "Myself is what the king asked for," Ned said. "And as for betters, your father fights the law. He does not write it. The words speak." "They do," said Baelish. He spoke so softly and pleasantly that one might take it for cough syrup, sweet and sly. "But whose ink was used and who held the pen? We have many pens in this city. Forgive me," he added, with the smile that begged to be believed just long enough to cause harm. "I am a practical man. You are summoned as Master of Coin," Ned said, "and you will answer in that office when I ask. How much silver do you hold for the city watch this week?" Baelish blinked. Varys, behind him, tilted his head very slightly, as if he had just seen a new path open in a hedge that he had thought long dead. The room felt the change the way a flock feels the idea that rises into the air and turns them all at once. "I had not thought the watch's purse the matter of the hour," Baelish said lightly. "There are other considerations." His eyes made a little journey to Cersei and back, a path lampied by interest and darkness both. "It is always the matter," Ned said, "when men must obey rather than remember their preferences." Baelish looked at him with something that was almost genuine then. He had calculated Ned, expected the Northern Lord's rage, his stiffness, his unwillingness to bend. He found, perhaps, that iron could be used to lever as well as to strike. He made a tiny shrug. "We hold enough," he said. "Coin comes, coin goes, coin returns, as long as those with claim are patient and those with power are imaginative. And if I require enough for 6 months' wages for the city watch to be placed under my seal this hour?" Ned asked. He had no intention of counting coin on the floor of the throne room, but the offer mattered. Baelish's smile altered a shiver. It discovered it was standing near a ledge. "I would say," he said conversationally, "that requires the concert of certain signatures." "Mine." "The hands. The king's. I am the protector until the heir comes of age," Ned said again, "and let the words be neither boast nor plea. The heir is not of age." He did not look at Joffrey when he said it. The boy was no boy for long. The city would make him a creature of itself more quickly than the gods had planned. Cersei's gaze slid like a drawn blade. "Your courage is gallant," she said coldly. "It will make a ballad when your head sits on the spires. The singers will work the rhyme with some clever turn. Nothing rhymes nicely with north, I fear. Dwarf, girth. Swarth, no, that is not an acceptable rhyme." She smiled that unkind woman's smile then, the one that is well kept like jewelry. "You have no power here." "I have this," Ned said, and touched the fold at his breast. Not invitation, not challenge. Naming. In the long moment that followed, the room balanced its own breath upon a coin. Renly shifted. His mouth opened enough to let a word begin. It was in that breath, that exact fragile sliver of time, that Baelish moved. It was not a thrust toward the hand. It was a movement of body that could be explained later as the reaching for a handkerchief to cover a cough, the smoothing of a coattail, the adjusting of a belt. He slid sideways, a little, into the shadow of the Lannister men standing at the base of the steps, and the hand that had rested upon his dagger did the thing that hands do when they have practiced alone in rooms where no one watches. Ned saw it because he had decided this morning that he would see such things. He saw the blade come, and in seeing it, he met a version of himself that he had always known but had not honored lately. The man who had fought beside Robert when they were boys of 18 and had not yet learned to mistrust speed. That man breathed into his blood and made the old pathways open. Baelish's dagger went not to Ned's throat, but toward the thong at Ned's breast. The hand aimed for parchment, not flesh. Ned's arm came up and his fingers closed around Baelish's wrist with a force that surprised them both. The dagger's point bit the leather and turned. Ned's other hand, empty a moment ago, had not been empty for long. Men think they know the contents of another man's sleeves. They do not expect the North to learn certain Southern tricks. The little blade Ned had taken to wearing since he limped through the city of angles was a humble thing, plain and meant to be held only when it could not be seen. He did not trust such tools, but he trusted less the men who made them necessary. He drove his blade into the meat of Baelish's forearm, a clean and practiced motion without flourish. Peter made a sound that was almost a laugh if one could laugh for half a heartbeat while one's body spoke of surprise. The dagger clattered. The Lannister guards, trained to watch for grand assaults, hesitated at the smallness of the act. Slint's men had been watching Littlefinger with that particular suspicion men of the city hold for men of accounts. Alan, who had shadowed behind Ned where a shadow could not be mistaken for fear, had his spear up and planted in the space between Baelish and the dais before even instinct could instruct a mind. "You should have learned to count fewer things," Ned said. The words came harshly, not because he wanted them to be, but because his breath had caught. He felt the swift surge of the room turning. All rooms have a hinge. He had just put his hand to it. Baelish's face emptied and then filled with it again. A quick tide. Something ugly showed through, a fish's mouth below the waterline. He tried to make his voice soft and found it dragged on the bottom. "You will regret," he began, and then Alan's spear but struck him across the knees and he went down, graceful even in collapse like a dancer who had decided his role had ended for the evening. Janos Slint had his men forward now in a gleaming line. "Hold," Ned said, and the order went like winter wind, shocking and clarifying together. No blood but his. He flicked his gaze at the smear that darkened Littlefinger's sleeve. For now, Cersei had not moved from her step. She looked as if she had smelled something that reminded her of a stable and a nursery together. Her eyes found Baelish, weighed him, found him wanting. "You are clumsy today, Lord Peter," she said. "I had thought you deft." Baelish's smile returned from where it had fled. It returned wrong. "I never claimed to be a swordsman," he said, and blood soaked the lace of his cuff with a kind of indolent beauty. "No," Ned said. "You claimed to be a friend." He looked to Slint. "Take him," he commanded. "Place him in a tower room. Bind his wound, and bind it well enough that he can talk before he dies. Poor binding can be a mercy of the wrong sort. Post 2 men who are less fond of games than of sleep. If he speaks to anyone but me or Ser Barristan or Lord Renly, cut out his tongue." Slint stared at him with a frankness that was almost admiration, flavored with the greed that comes when a man believes he has found someone who will pay more kindly than the last man did. "I," he said and gestured. Baelish was taken up. His expression did not alter. If there was fear in him, it was the sort that made friends only in private rooms. He lifted his eyes to Ned as he was carried past. They were bright as the stones of some cheap ring that has learned to deceive candlelight but not the sun. "You are not the only man with little blades," he murmured. "Nor the only man with friends," Ned said. "Take comfort from that." He did not watch him go, because to watch a man go is to admit that he occupies space in your thoughts. He would give the master of coin as little of that space as possible. The room breathed again. The tension had not broken so much as it had found a new arrangement for itself. A murmur ran outward because that is what murmurs do. They are like weeds finding cracks. Cersei's hand tightened on Joffrey's, and for the first time that morning, the boy looked not only angry but unsure. He understood, perhaps, that 2 currents crossed at threshing floor moment. One was his mother's tide. The other was something older and less given to splendor, law, and the respect a steel-clad city has for men who talk with the voice it recognizes. "Protector indeed," Cersei said softly. "You have protected us from a wit. How noble. I have protected the realm from a man who thought the realm an account to be settled in his favor," Ned replied. "And I will continue to do so." Renly took 1 step forward. His gaze went to the parchment that lay torn near the page's trembling hands. "We will require another copy," he said lightly, as if practicalities could smooth the scales of a dragon. But his lightness was not cruel. It was the lightness of a man who knew the weight of the thing he carried and chose to lift it with humor. "The words remain, even if the skin upon which they were drawn has been offended." Pycelle bobbed his head. "Why, yes. Yes, of course, a copy can be made." "A copy is not needed," Barristan said. "The law is not in the parchment." He looked to Ned. "What do you command, my lord?"
Ned breathed.
The structure of what must be done made itself known to him the way a river's current is felt with the eyes closed. "First," he said, "the doors. Slint, take 16 men, trustworthy ones, and set them on the great doors and the posterns. We will let no one leave the Red Keep without my word, and no armed men enter. Disarm any Lannister soldiers who came with the Queen into this hall. They may keep their clothing, not their steel." The Lannister men swore. Cersei's laugh sounded like a spoon scraping an empty bowl. "You would leave me naked in a room of wolves? In a room of men bound by law," Ned said. "Your honor will clothe you better than steel." "What a northern sermon," she said. But she put out her hand and took Joffrey's arm and drew him one step back from the base of the dais. She measured the room with her gaze and found that even the tapestry lions were not enough today to make cunning be the same as strength. Ned turned. "Ser Barristan," he said, "summon the Kingsguard, all 7 if the gods and their own health permit. The king is dead. There must be no doubt who they serve now. The law until the rightful heir is named." He did not say which heir, not here, not yet. The words would have to be shaped with such care as a man uses to trim a wick and not quite burn his fingers. Barristan inclined his head. "I will bring them," he said. "Ash." He looked at Ser Boros and Ser Meryn. There was an old weariness in that look and an older obligation. "Renly," Ned said, and when he said the name he let something like trust into it. "I will require your help. The city will want bread and calm. It will want to know that it can fetch water without losing its coins to men who think opportunities grow from corpses. It will want to see you ride." Renly's mouth curved. He was very handsome when he smiled this way, not the handsome of a drawing but of a man who knows his face is a tool as well as a mirror. "I have always liked riding," he said, "and bread. I have been known to use both to some effect." "Use them now," Ned said. "Speak to the guilds if you must. Speak to the faith. The 7 love order. They will hate chaos more than they love crowns." Renly nodded. "I will speak to the High Septon," he said. "He seldom leaves his chair, but he listens to me as men listen to fountains in drought." Cersei watched this with a fascinating kind of rage that did not spill. It stacked itself in careful piles, hoarded for the day when it could burn a house entirely. "Do you suppose any of this will last past noon?" she asked. "I suppose the noon will last," Ned said. He signaled to Alan. "Find Tomard. I want a list of all the rooms in the Tower of the Hand and the Tower of the Kingsguard. I want keys. I will have the Master of Coins ledgers brought, and the keys to the mint and the city granaries. If any man refuses, break his door. There is no privy purse in times such as these. There is only the realm's purse, and profligate men will learn its latch is not theirs." Alan's grin showed for an instant and vanished. "I," he said, satisfaction honest and simple in his voice. He liked doors that thought themselves more important than those who used them. Varys stepped forward, palms together, the picture of an attentive priest. "My lord," he murmured, "might I suggest that we also send riders to the Riverlands and to the Rock? News will outrun even the fastest horse when it suits rumor, but a word born with the weight of the hand may choose its path more wisely." Ned raised his eyebrows. "You will guide them," he said. He had always mistrusted the eunuch, not because he had been unmanned, but because he had learned to be a man without certain appetites and had found other, stranger ones to feed. But in this, he recognized in Varys a trait he could use. A love of balance that looked like mercy until one examined it closely and discovered it was only appreciation for roofs that did not fall. They will carry simple messages. The king is dead. The law holds. The queen and her children are safe under the protection of the hand. No levy is to be called without writ from the protector. No host is to march. Varys's eyes shone with a kind of pleasure that made Ned a little cold. "Why, my lord," he said, "you are a lover of peace." "I am a lover of my people," Ned said. "Peace is a byblow of that love." He thought of Robb's face, not yet long enough at the jaw to bear a beard with proper dignity, and of Sansa's hands folded earnestly upon the table when she spoke of lemon cakes and dances. He thought of Arya with dirt on her lip and a sword in her hand that wanted to be a stick and chose not to. The word people had ridges. He did not flinch from them. Cersei's voice came again, soft as a pelt. "And who," she said, "will tell my father that his grandchildren have been placed under your shelter? Who will carry that letter?" "I will," Ned said. "I will write to Lord Tywin and tell him what the bells have already said. And I will tell him the truth he knows, that the city will not be forced by the West, and that if he loves his blood he will exercise the restraint that befits a man who has always claimed his greatness lay in discipline." "You think you know my father," she murmured. "You do not know him as I do. I know what men respect: force, honor, coin, and the story they tell themselves about their own brightness," Ned said. "I will give him a story to tell that does not end with his lines scattered like coins after a tavern toss." Joffrey tore his arm from her hand then. His face flushed a hot and unbeautiful red. "You dare," he said, and his voice cracked, betraying him to an age he wished he had already outgrown. "You dare to speak to the king so?" "I will." "You will speak when spoken to," Ned said, and let the command fall like a cloak across the boy's shoulders. He had used that voice when he caught a stable lad jabbing a pitchfork at a terrified mare. It was not unkind as a whip is unkind. It was unkind the way winter is unkind. Joffrey's mouth closed because he had not the arsenal yet to refuse it. Ned felt the city then in the bones of the hall. He felt the long, invisible avenues along which news travels, the secret doors between kitchens and counting houses, the webs within webs that catch flies and sometimes catch hawks too. He felt what he would not say, that if he declared such things openly here, about her children and the parentage that gave them their hair and their eyes, if he threw that fire into straw in this hour, then the blaze would scorch the city so swiftly that the smell of it would be on the wind as far as the bloody gate. He might yet have to name that fire, but not now. Not until the doors were locked and the ledgers were captured and the men with halberds remembered they were men and not appetites in iron. He turned to the assembly. The words did not need to be many. "Go to your homes," he told the lesser lords and the ladies who had come for news as a cat comes to a hearth. "Light no beacons. Whisper no alarms. You will have the protector's writ by noon. Until then, feed your servants and forbid them from crowding the streets to gawk. Gawking breeds stone throwing. Stone throwing breeds blood." They went. People always go when a man speaks with that particular mixture of courtesy and authority. He had rarely used it. He would use it now as often as necessary until it did not sound like his own voice anymore. He dismissed the room piece by piece, until it was Cersei and her children and 2 Lannister men unarmed now, their hands groping for the habit of going to their sword hilts and finding instead the awkward weight of their own fingers. Barristan stood with him, Renly to his right, Varys a little behind as if he had been drawn by some invisible string that always placed him where he could hear and not be called upon to answer. "You will be our guest in Maegor's Holdfast, your grace," Ned said to Cersei, and the title tasted of ice. "Your children will be lodged with you. You will have women of your choosing, unarmed, and nurses for Tommen and Myrcella. Your son Joffrey will have tutors and the company of knights suitable to his station. You will not leave the Holdfast without my escort. This is a matter of safety, your safety, and your convenience," she said with such contempt that it made even the tapestry lions look away. "It is the same this day," he said. "You think to put a lion in a pen and not teach it to remember your scent," she said. "Every day you keep me from my own apartments will be a day added to the sum of your retribution. We will see if Winterfell's walls are thick enough to keep out what comes when the West decides to remember your name." "Winterfell's walls have not forgotten any name they have had to keep," Ned said, and in the saying he felt a calm curve through him like the sweep of a kestrel's wing. Come. He did not take her arm, nor did he stand aside as if she were a queen in truth and he some steward of her corridors. He walked beside her and felt the air change around them as a ship feels the change when it sails from river into sea. In the passage he paused and looked up. The light from beyond the narrow windows had sharpened, hard as coin. The bells had begun to tire in their throats. Soon enough the city would tire of listening. Sansa was waiting when he reached the solar later because someone had disobeyed him and told her, and because Sansa had the sort of loyalty that sits outside a locked door and convinces the lock it should not be doing this to a good girl. Her eyes were red-rimmed and enormous. She rose when he entered, and for a little moment the years fell away and she looked for again, all knees and seriousness. "Father," she said, and ran to him, forgetting to curtsy. Her small good mind corrected itself a half-second later and she drew back, cheeks coloring. "My lord," she amended quite wrongly. "Come," he said, and took her to him. She smelled of soap and lilies and the sort of worry that young hearts have, pure and excessive. "You must be brave." "I am brave," she said quickly, and then blinked, surprised at herself for claiming what she had only been repeating to herself like a charm. "I will be brave. The Queen," she checked herself. "The Queen is a woman and a mother," he said. "Today she is dangerous because grief is dangerous. It turns on itself and then finds targets outside. You will not go near her. You will write to your mother and tell her you are safe and that you have been invited to remain in the Red Keep for the memorial ceremonies. You will make the letter very pretty, with all your good script, and you will not cross out any words when you find you don't like them. That tells a reader you were thinking too hard." Sansa nodded furiously. "Will I be queen still?" she asked, and then covered her mouth with her hand as if she had said a filthy word. Her eyes went slippery with terror. "I did not mean, I only thought Lord Joffrey." He saw the thing shatter in her eyes and wanted, very humanly, to pick up the pieces and slot them back into place so she would not cut herself on them. The thought was as quick as breath. The truth came harder. "Joffrey is a boy in need of teachers," he said gently. "The realm has men. Men who are patient. Sometimes patience is a better teacher than love." He sighed, a real sigh, so that she would know he did not lie to her for kindness. "I do not know what will be, Sansa. I know what must be now. That is often the only knowledge the gods permit men." She nodded, face too solemn and too old. "Arya is with Syrio," she said, as if that might be a comfort to him. "She says he makes the world small when the sword is in her hand." He smiled despite himself. "He is a wise man," he said, "a dangerous man, which is a kind of wisdom." He stroked her hair. It was soft as a summer fox's fur. "I require you to practice your courtesies," he said. "They will keep you safe better than any blade they will allow you to carry." "I will," she promised. Something in her mouth set in that stubborn line he knew well from another face, the mother's. He kissed her forehead. "Eat," he said. "Find something you like to eat. Foods that run away from you are not for this day." She smiled properly then, small and real. "Bread," she said with sudden fierce eagerness. "I will have bread with honey, and the honey will be new." "Let it be," he said. "Bring some to your sister if you can find her without losing your way. She likes to pretend she does not like sweet things. It's a lie." "I know," she breathed, and ran like a soft fall of water. Only then did he allow himself to sit. He had thought of the chair in his solar all morning without meaning to, how it would take his weight and hold it without opinion. When he sank into it, his bones asserted their right to be known. He poured himself watered wine out of habit. Wine was the friend of men who had many enemies. It was also the last betrayal of men who did not know when to dismiss their friends. He drank the mouthful and put the cup aside. On the table, the ledgers Peter had sent once like gifts lay open. Numbers marched in lines like men in the field. They pretended to tell the truth. They did, but not the whole of it. He would learn their grammar with the help of men who could add sums without adding themselves to them. Alan came back with Tomard and the lists in hand, the keys on a ring so large it could have been used to fend off a boar. "You have all this?" Alan said, almost gleeful. "And there's more that doesn't even have names. Doors behind doors." "I will give them names," Ned said. "We cannot hold what we cannot call." He sent Alan to price at the mint and to the grain wardens with writs in his hand that bore the weight of the seal he had taken when he ought. He sent Tomard with 6 men to the Master of Coins' apartments to retrieve all books, letters, and lists. "Do not accept any tale about special chests that only open to certain words," he said. "If the chest resists, carry it bodily. If the door resists, take the hinges." The frank joy in Tomard's eye was obscene and entirely useful. By the time the sun had climbed to a place where it bullied even the pigeons out of the gutters, matters had arranged themselves into a brittle kind of order. The King's Guard had gathered, white like spilled milk. Ser Barristan, Ser Balonswan, Ser Ares Oakhart, men whose names were honor and whose faces were stone. Ser Boros and Ser Marin wore their white cloaks like a kindness that had grown heavy. When they stood before him, Ned felt something like sadness. These men had made themselves swords. Swords can be lifted by any hand that is stronger than they are. "You will swear," Ned said, "to obey the Protector until such time as the rightful heir is confirmed before gods and men. You will guard the Queen and her children in their apartments and suffer no harm to come to them. You will bear witness to the letters I send to lords great and small. You will not be instruments of any house in this matter. You will be instruments only of the law." They swore. Men who had sworn before would swear again. It was not a cure. It was a promise. Promises are levels, they make things even when only for a time. Varys returned as afternoon turned the stone of the keep's corridors into ovens. He had sent the ravens. He had sent the riders. He had found the High Septon, who had murmured about the mother's tears and agreed to keep the faithful in prayer rather than in the streets. He brought also a report from the kitchens that the great ovens would bake through the night to provide loaves for those who queued at dawn. "Bread is sometimes better than righteousness," the eunuch said, smiling. "Bread keeps men from remembering how easy it is to knock their neighbors down with a brick," Ned said. "Righteousness only reminds them how to speak after." "You could have a very fine career as a priest after this," Varys said, unblinking. "All of them speak so neatly in your north." "Neat words spoil if kept too long," Ned said. He took up quill and parchment. He had letters to write that would not please anyone who received them. They went out to Lord Tywin, to Lord Stannis on Dragonstone, to Lord Renly's allies among the Stormlords who had loved Robert a little and loved feasts more. He did not mention bastardy. He did not mention incest. He spoke of will, of law, of safety. He spoke of the promise that the Queen and her children were not to be harmed, and thus no honor was tainted yet by blood spilled where children could see it. He asked, politely and with flint under the white cloth, that the river lords hold their wrath further, that there be no further burnings. He made that last ask knowing how little of it would be granted without a counterweight. When evening came ash-gray and bruised with heat, when the bells had gone hoarse, he went down to the dungeons himself. A man who sends others to darkness should know the smell of it. Janos Slint led him, a torch flickering. The flame made a line along the damp stones, a thin red mouth. Littlefinger sat on the pallet in his cell with his back against the wall, and his wounded arm bound by a bandage that was cleaner than it should have been. Someone had been careful with him. "Lord Stark," he said, pleasant as a steward greeting a lord in his own hall. "We seem to have found ourselves with an opportunity to tell each other truths." "Do not waste yours," Ned said. He did not sit. He did not touch the bars. "You tried to take the king's will from my hand." "Why? Why does a magpie try to take rings?" Peter asked. His smile was sly and private. "Why does a boy try to nip an apple from a cart? I saw a thing worth having, and I like to have such things. That letter was a tether. I do not like to see other men leading horses I wanted to ride." "What did you intend? To sell it back to me?" Ned asked. "To hold it over me, perhaps, while you sold its contents to a dozen buyers for a dozen favors. How often can a man sell one coin and have the coin still in his hand?"
Ah, Petyr Breted.
You do not understand me at all. When a man as honest as you is forced to understand a man like me, he begins to be someone else. And yet, I confess, that might have been a pleasant sport. To sell the thing and keep it, to sell it again. A juggler with 3 knives and only 2 hands. He raised his bandaged arm and made a little show of it. I am now, unfortunately, equipped for that trick rather less perfectly than before. Ned looked at him the way a man looks at an adder that has been pinned just behind the head with a forked stick. You wanted chaos, he said. You thought in chaos you would climb. You have told yourself that your cleverness is proof of your right to step atop a city's roof beams while it burns. Peter's head tilted. We all tell ourselves something, he said. What do you tell yourself when you look at that woman and her children? Do you tell yourself truths? I tell myself the truth that will prevent 1,000 men from dying before their children learn their letters, Ned said. And I tell myself that the truth you mean will be told, but only when it will serve law and not appetite. Ah, Peter said, softly, so you have learned to use words like the rest of us. Serve, appetite, law. You will find soon enough that law is only appetite given robes. Perhaps, Ned said, but I will make those robes fit men who are not you. You flatter me by thinking I might try them on, Peter replied. The gown would drag. I prefer my old clothes. They have the advantage of many pockets. He looked up at Ned. The show dropped away for the first time. He showed the small, stark face of a boy who had been poor and desirous and humiliated and had not forgiven any of those things. Do you think you have prevented anything? He asked, and there was a little wonder in it. You have merely delayed the hour at which knives are counted. Men like Tywin are not put off by writs. They are put off by corpses. Stannis will not be put off by gentle words about bread. He is a fire that eats words and asks for more. Renly is a silk that snags on swords and then complains, loudly, about the coarseness of steel. You are very good, Lord Stark. Too good for this. He shook his head. I would have enjoyed watching you try. It is a pity I will do so from behind these bars. Ned felt a weariness that threatened to become anger, and refused it. I will let you live, he said, for a time, because I will not give the city the story that you were murdered in your cell while the queen was held apart from her friends. But do not mistake me. Your life is a loan, and I charge interest. Peter's smile returned and took up residence again in the lower corners of his mouth. Oh, he said softly, I never mistake a man who speaks like that. You have learned, Lord Stark. Be careful. Some lessons do not forget you. When Ned left the cell, the light from the torch made the braid along Slint's sleeve look as if it were burning. If he speaks to anyone, he said, you will tell me. If any paper leaves this corridor, I will know which hand carried it. Slint nodded. Aye, my lord. And you shall have your men's wages. 2 months today, 2 months at the new moon, Ned said. You will tell them this came from the Protector's hand, not from any house. If I hear that any man boasts his pay came from a lion, I will have him scrub the cells with his cloak and sleep there. Slint's grin had a vulgar pleasure in it. They will sing your praises in Flea Bottom, he said. Let them sing bread, Ned said. It is a better song. That night the city changed its breath again. The heat did not ease much, but shadows in the courtyards stretched longer. From the holdfast, where Cersei and her children had been lodged in rooms whose tapestries still smelled faintly of old incense and older fear, there came music that tried to be cheerful and failed. Renly rode the street of flour with a tail of green-cloaked men and tossed copper stags into the hands of women who were brave enough to jostle near his stirrup. He made his voice carry, speaking of the mother's compassion and the father's justice. He spoke of mourning indignity and of the preparation for the king's funeral vigil. He was a good showman. The city likes a good showman the way a crowd likes a man who can juggle 5 knives and catch them all only at the last moment so that it can still be shocked at its own relief. Ned sat with his maps. He traced the road to the Riverlands with a dull iron stylus. He thought of Catelyn's hand on his shoulder when she had asked him for trust in the matter of Tyrion. He thought of Tyrion himself, a half-man with a whole man's mind, laughing even when the laugh ran blood. He had sent a courteous letter to the imp. Come to the city under the protector's guarantee, and we will determine the truth of the matter of the dagger. He suspected the letter would find Tyrion before it found any sort of court. He suspected Tyrion would smile and think, as Peter had, that now the game played itself with new pieces and a board whose squares were better chalked. He slept a little and then less. He woke before dawn. The air was cooler with the coolness that is the memory of night, which is to say not cool enough to be called relief. He went to the window and looked out upon the rooftops. The city looked like an exhausted beast. He wondered what part of it could ever be rested, if any. He wondered which part of himself could. Barristan came with news at first light. The Lord Commander's face was grave and a little uncertain. Stannis has not replied, he said. He may be sailing. Ravens to Dragonstone went and were returned. One dead, one with the marks of hawks on its wings. Someone hunts. Then they will hunt me by land, Ned said. He felt the weight of the choice before him like a yoke across his shoulders. He drew breath and straightened under it. He is the rightful heir. By law, Barristan said simply. By law, Ned agreed. And he is not loved. No, Barristan said, and a weary compassion softened his mouth for a moment. But we are not in the business of love. I admit, I have longed for it sometimes. For a king whom the people loved and who loved his people. I served one who was loved by victory. I have served those who were loved by fear. I sometimes wonder if love ails a king as much as a wound might do. We will give him the law even if the city gives him nothing, Ned said. If he is at sea, he will come to shore eventually. Law is like a shore. It does not move to meet you, but there it is when your ship has to find ground. A fair simile, Barristan said. I pray you are right. Ned sent more letters. He sent to the Reach. He sent to the Vale, where a woman answered to the name Aaron and to grief both, and where a boy had been taught to see the world as the place where sickness came from. He asked for the courtesy of a messenger. He asked for an audience. He asked without asking. His language learned to be shaped by a city he did not love. He did not mention his suspicion about the parentage of the Queen's children in any of these. He held tea, had truth like a coal in a bare palm. It burned, and he learned how to bear it because to drop it would be to catch the room on fire. He visited Cersei in her holdfast with 2 women of the faith as escort, not because he needed them to restrain her, but because he wished to make plain to her that the eyes upon her were not only his. She received him in a gown of summer-weight silk that could not keep her from seeming armored. Myrcella sat with a hoop and a basket of bright, stubborn fabrics. Tommen gnawed at a sugared almond under the eye of a nurse who could not decide if grief made sweets a sin. Joffrey stood at the window like a flag. You hold us fast, Cersei said without the courtesy of greeting. I hold you safe, Ned replied. The city is calmer than it would be if you were permitted to walk the corridors with your father's men. This is my duty. Duty, she said like a curse. And will you speak duty when the river lords burn for their insult? And when the West brings 30,000 lances to your gates? I will speak it then too, he said. I will speak it when I write the names of any man who marches without my writ, and I will remember them when I have cause to write pardons. Mercy is a coin. One spends it where it buys peace at the lowest price. You are a fool, Cersei said, and something cracked in her voice. Finally, something the day before had not been able to break. You are a fool of a decent sort, the worst kind. I could have pitied you if you had died in a battle with a blade in your belly. I might even have had your name sung. Now I will see it sewed into a bag and hung on my father's wall. Ned looked at her steadily. When this is done, he said, with a weariness that did not require him to raise his voice, and your children are men and women, they will remember whether their mother taught them rage or taught them to live with what life gives. Choose your lesson. The only lesson worth teaching them, she said, is that if they are not the ones to decide, then someone else will decide for them, and the decision will not be kind. He thought of the boy at Winterfell, his own, who had gone to the wall because he had not had another name to carry. He thought of Snow cutting the world with a clean, bright line. Sometimes kindness must be taught the way you teach a mule to accept a bridle, he said. With patience and a steady hand. He felt old saying it. He felt older not to have said it. Joffrey turned at last. If I walk out of this holdfast, he demanded, will you have your men strike me? Will they lay hands on their king? You will not walk out of this holdfast, Ned said, because I command it, because your mother will not permit it, because Barristan Selmy would not permit it, because even Ser Boros without his sword knows the value of a door. If you try, the door will not be what breaks you. The air will, the city will. You do not know how to breathe outside this room yet. Learn. I will send a man to teach you history. History is breath. Joffrey's eyes glittered. I will have your head for this, he said, in a small, clear voice like a boy reciting from a primer. Ned inclined his head. Perhaps, he said, but for now you will have bread and a morning lesson. He turned to go. Myrcella looked up and met his gaze with a pupil's respectful courage. Tommen said, Sir? As if he were not sure if the title was proper for a father to receive. Cersei did not speak again. In the corridors outside, Renly fell into step with him. You will lose this game you have decided to play, he said without malice. Even a decent man loses games here. It is not a game, Ned said. That is what the players tell themselves, Renly replied lightly. His smile was not unkind, which made it worse. Tyrells have sent word that they would be honored to bring their own bread to the capital to feed the poor in honor of the king's memory. They will bring 2,000 spears with the loaves. For protection. For their honor, Ned said dryly. We will accept the bread and count the spears. They are very good at counting their own, Renly murmured. They will expect to be counted back. He glanced at Ned. You sent to Stannis. I did. And if he comes, I will stand with him, Ned said. The law. Renly's smile deepened, melancholy now. You mean to be the one honest man in a city built of angles and beveled edges. He shrugged. I will ride again today. Bread and fountains. I will keep the streets from making stories about a hostage queen. You do this well, Ned said. It was praise and also an acknowledgement of a debt. It will be remembered. By men who write ledgers, Renly said. If by no one else. He looked toward the sea. And what then, when your Stannis comes to shore with his eyes like winter? He will not be moved by fountains or by bread. He will ask for obedience and expect it to come like the tide. He will affront anyone who was ever too well dressed at a feast. And the Tyrells will bring wine because they can't help themselves. Then we will have to find in him something flexible, Ned said, or give him a thing so fixed that others will have to bend around it. I would make you hand in truth, Renly under the king. Renly blinked. The offer had been in the room all morning, but to hear it spoken aloud made even the air still. You would put me in that chair with Stannis in the other? He asked softly. I would, Ned said, because the city will need a man who can smile and make it mean something. Because the faith will look at Stannis and see a man who does not yield, which can be holy or horrifying, and they will need a man who can ask them to choose holiness instead of horror. Because bread is a language. Renly studied him, the breeze from the window playing with his hair like a harpist practicing a little in the middle of a grave matter. You are not the fool they have painted you, he said. I am a fool, Ned said. Only I am. Not a fool in all the ways they think. He waited until Renly had laughed, a soft, almost affectionate sound, and then he said, keep the city's self-respect. Later we will ask it to do a hard thing. Men do hard things more easily if they have not been made small first. Renly went out with his green cloaks, and the city did as cities do. It ate, it gossiped, it prayed, it took the measure of power with the slow tongue of time. Ned sat with parchment and sealed what parchment needed sealing. He dispatched men with writs. He received men who wished to sell him information. He purchased some of it as one purchases fish on a hot day. Quickly, with suspicion, and with an intent to eat immediately or not at all. He wrote another letter to Winterfell, this one to Robb, and told him, Do not move, not yet, however your friends urge you. The boy was a man now in name, but men listened to their friends with a hunger that is sometimes only the hunger of fear. He told him, I hold your sisters. They are safe. I will not lose them. I will not lose you. He told him, hold the north like you would hold a hilt, with all your strength and without a flourish. He did not write the thing he longed to write, that he missed the small sound a horse makes when it snorts steam in the morning, and that the sea's whisper in this place was like the whisper of bad advice. Toward sunset, when the sea at last offered some real wind and the gulls came inland as if to consult old friends about a storm, a messenger came from the riverlands, dusty and clotted with the day's decision. He bore a letter with the tully trout impressed in wax barely cooled. Caitlin had held this in her hand, Ned thought, and the thought made even the air of the room feel meaningful. He read in a stillness that started in his chest and spread to his fingers. The letter told him of the burning of villages along the Red Fork, of banners seen limned in the reddening sky that could be no man's but a Lannister's, of Tywin's men under a banner of some lesser creature harrying where they could and fleeing when they must. It told him, not without a strain he could hear in the strokes, that she had set Tyrion Lannister free upon certain promises and certain necessities, that she believed the dagger was not his and that his clever tongue would serve better unchained than chained, that she dared this because a mother dared what a mother must when one child lay under threat and another wandered in danger she had imposed by her own hand. It told him that Robb meant to call banners, that the great gray wolf that slept inside the men of the north had woken when it heard the cried names of burned farmers and bleeding millers. It told him, in the words between words that only a man who has watched a woman's mouth move around the truth can read, that she was afraid of what honor requires and that she did not yet know how to speak to fear without moving into it as a room. Ned sat long with the letter open on the table, as if it were a map of a country he had once thought he could easily walk. When he lifted his head at last, the sky through the window's slit was purpled at the edges, as if the world had a bruise that was just now beginning to show. He wrote back to Caitlin, quickly and then slowly and then with great slowness. He told her about Sansa and Arya, about the city's new quiet, about the holdfast where the queen now paced like a lion that had learned a new cage. He told her nothing of the other truth, not yet. He told her he would bring the city to a place where law could be spoken aloud without being devoured by appetite in the saying. He told her to tell Robb to wait, to hold until his father commanded, to remember that the North had again and again saved itself by thunder that it released only when the sky could bear it. In the days that followed, the city learned to listen for a different bell. It learned that loaves would be distributed at noon at the steps of the Great September and at the Square of Silk and at the fish market. It learned that the watch would not take bribes this week. It was unnatural. It could not last. It made them frightened, in a way, the way a husband is frightened when a wife who has always shouted suddenly speaks softly. It learned that petitions could be made at the Tower of the Hand, and that if the petition concerned things like roofing or flour or the return of a husband from a debtor's cell, a clerk would hear and sometimes a guard would act. It learned to talk of the protector as of a wall that had been repaired. It would complain of the plaster and the mess and then go to sleep more soundly. Cersei did not forgive. She sent for ink and had letters smuggled if she could. Some reached the rock. Some reached only the inside of a drawer and stayed there waiting for some future rummager. Peter's quiet allies moved like minnows, and sometimes Ned's hand was too slow to scoop them. But men do not become minnows by choice. They do so by fear. Where fear is addressed by a steady voice, minnows sometimes school elsewhere. He made his voice steady until he did not recognize it anymore. The first real challenge came not from the west or the Riverlands, but from a place no one had looked at with attention even though it had stood in plain sight. The Faith Militant had no swords by law, but it had men with knives who thought themselves right because they had seen too much wrong. A zealot made a speech at the steps of Baelor that named the queen a witch and a mother of monsters. He was hauled away, shouting about incest, though no one could say how he knew or whether he had guessed. The crowd hissed and then wept for him. Ned had the man whipped. Not hard enough to break him, hard enough to sting, hard enough to remind those who watched that truth could not be shouted in fire without burning the city's own lungs. He visited the High Septon and listened to the theater of his pieties, how the gods must be honored, how the mother must be allowed to pour her grief in peace. Let her grieve in private, Ned said, and let your men grieve by feeding the hungry. I will send flour to your kitchen hearths. Give it away, but bind the mouths of your loudest sons until law has a chair to sit in again. At the end of 1 week, Renly brought him a report that made even Haleen the pyromancer smile. No riots, Renly declared with a flourish of parchment as if presenting a hope chest. Only the one near the river gate and the other near the hook, and those were lads with more ale than heat. There has been no pillaging. There has been very little stabbing. The cobblers petitioned for lower cobblers' fees, which I assume you will deny with a smile. I will lower the stamp at the mint, Ned said, half to himself. Bread first, then leather. You will be a very dull king, Renly said, amused and grim together. I will never be king, Ned replied. Let us hope you will be something better, Renly said. Men seem to live longer. On the 9th day, a sail was seen from the tower of the White Sword, beating in awkwardly against a contrary wind. Varys brought the news with a face unruffled by satisfaction. From Dragonstone, he said, they fly the crowned stag and the fiery hart both. Stannis comes. Ned let the air out of his chest. He had wanted this. He had dreaded it the way a man dreads a wound being set. Prepare the hall, he said, and have bread laid out. Salt too. The old courtesies shall be kept. Cersei's laugh reached him from the holdfast when she was told. It was not a laugh of joy or even of relief. It was a sound like glass being walked upon. Your winter comes, she said. It will eat your bread and call it famine. Even winter eats bread, Ned said, and made himself remember that stubbornness was a virtue until it was a sin. He would stand between. He would stand and be struck by both sides. He had done it in battle with his body. He would do it now with his days. He went to the window and stood there until the sea became innumerable plates of hammered iron. He thought of a boy in a tower who had once begged him to be brave, of a sister whose voice he heard when the wind came down the long corridors at Winterfell just before snow. He thought of a promise he had carried for half a life, a quiet promise with teeth. He put his hand to the place over his heart where he kept everything he had not yet paid. The city breathed. The day moved. The ship came on. He gathered his household. He took a long breath and then a longer. When he stepped into the throne room again, the light fell right across the iron throne so that all its ugly edges were not softened but made honest. Renly stood with the green of a new leaf. Barristan stood with the white of a bone. Varys had folded himself into the place where shadows accumulated. Slynt had set his men like toys on a board, each precisely placed, each with the capacity to be knocked down if a careless elbow struck the table. They waited. The doors opened. The standard came first, black stag on gold, and within it the red heart in flames. Stannis entered in black that had been too long at sea. The salt had made patterns like frost along the hem. He was thinner than Ned remembered him, more scoured. His mouth had the tightness of a man who had found that speaking hurt and had done it anyway, often. He stopped at the foot of the dais and his eyes went to the throne and then to Ned. My brother is dead, he said without preamble. He is, Ned replied, and you are his heir. Stannis's gaze cut like a winter wind that has discovered a gap beneath the tent's edge. The queen resides in Maegor's holdfast with her children, guarded by the Kingsguard and by my men, Ned said promptly. Her honor is untouched. Her honor was never touched to begin with, Stannis said, and in those words there was a whole history of affronts that had nothing to do with a bed. He looked around the hall and saw what he wished to see and what he did not. I am king. The law says so, Ned agreed, and the city is calm. Bread is baked. The watch is paid. The faith is quiet. Men wait. He took the parchment he had prepared and held it out. Swear to be protector until you are crowned and to rule by the law as your brother swore. I do not swear to the law, Stannis said, eyes narrowing. The law swears to me. Ned held his gaze and did not let it turn aside. It does not, he said. It belongs to the realm. It belongs to the smallest man in Flea Bottom and the greatest lord at Highgarden. It belongs to me until you are crowned. Take it. Make yourself worthy of its respect by showing respect. Men will obey you more gladly then. Even those who do not love you will sleep better." Stannis's mouth twisted as if he had bitten something that had looked sweet and proved bitter. He looked to Renly. He passed over him with a scorn that was habitual and therefore easier than hatred. He looked to Barristan and found in that face only the stillness of a man who has decided, privately and finally, what he will be and how he will die. He looked to Varys and saw nothing because Varys always showed men what they had already decided to see. He looked back to Ned. "You are a strange man," he said slowly. "You tell me truth in a tone that sounds like command." "Because it is," Ned said. "Not command from me to you, command from duty to any man who would be king. If you do not hear it, you will not be king for long." Silence filled the hall. It was a good silence, honest and uncomfortable. Stannis reached out and took the parchment. He did not look at it long. He made a rough scratch of his name, which looked like a scar across fine skin. "I will sit until the crown is placed," he said. "I will write what must be written. I will mend what can be mended." He lifted his chin. "And I will have justice." "You will have it," Ned said very low. "In season, to keep the realm from starving on it." Stannis's eyes fell. "Art, justice is not a vintage to be cellared until some rich man's tongue may praise its qualities. It is also not clean water to be thrown about when men are choking on smoke," Ned said, and felt in his bones the argument that would span days. Stannis made a short sound. It could have been a laugh if laughter did not die at the border of his lips. "Very well," he said. He looked around the hall again, as if committing to memory the cords and the ropes and the who of who. "Bring me the queen," he said. "Bring me my brother's children. Let there be no whispering that I dared not look upon them when I spoke the truth that makes me king." Ned drew a breath that went to the bottom of him. "You will look upon them," he said quietly, "and you will not speak that truth here. Not yet. Not while bread is still being cut. You will speak it before gods and men and with proof that can be weighed and measured and not gossiped. Or I leave you with a city that burns while you put on your crown." The hall had its hinge again. On one side stood a man who had made a shape of his will until he had thought it was iron, and on the other stood a man who had shaped his will around his duty and found it to be something like oak. They regarded each other like carpenters judging the grain before they set their hand to the saw. Renly exhaled softly, his hand twitching near his sash as if longing for a flagon instead of a sword. Varys's lids lowered, a satisfied cat. Barristan watched the space between the men as if that space were the thing he had chosen to defend. Stannis nodded once only, as if acknowledging a fact he could not pretend away. "Before gods and men then," he said, "at the September, with the High Septon to witness, with the ledgers of the dark and the day brought forth, with Jaime Lannister questioned before his white brothers." He paused. The pause was not strategy. It was habit. "And after that," he said very quietly, and the quiet was more frightening than any shout, "I will have heads." Ned closed his eyes for the barest moment. He saw a snowfall. He opened them. "In their time," he said. "In their time." The city, hearing later of the arrival of Stannis and the bread and the unusual quiet of the watch, began to make its own stories because stories were the form bread took when it needed to last. It told itself that the protector had taken law to wife and given mercy the place of a beloved mistress. It told itself that the queen walked behind a silk that did not keep the world out. It told itself that the younger Baratheon rode like a young spring and the older one stood like a steel, and that between them there was a man with a weary face who held a quill as if it were a sword he had learned to use left-handed. These were not bad stories to live under. Men have lived under worse and done worse more readily. Ned stood on a balcony at dusk and watched the bay. The sky had found its bruises and decided to wear them. He thought of the promise of a tower and a birthing bed and a wind that cut. He thought of a boy at the wall, cold and too stubborn to name it. He thought of a girl with black hair and bruised shins and a stubborn wrist. He thought of a girl who had learned to fold her grief with her gowns. He thought of a woman who would have taken his outstretched hand this moment with all the anger and love that any woman has ever used to keep a man from drowning. He would go to the September. He would stand where men had stood with crowns and with their throats bared both. He would bring the ledgers and the book of lineages and the iron truth that the gods themselves had allowed to be written in the color of hair and the movement of mouths. He would ask the high septon to speak words the seven could bear. He would let the city breathe between each sentence. He would watch for knives. He would listen for bells. And then the story would change again, because stories never consent to be told only once. He put his hand upon the stone and felt it hold him up as if stones could be hands. He did not pray. He was not sure if the gods of this place heard men who smelled of the north. But he did something like it. He made an oath inside himself that did not ask a god to witness and did not require an altar. He promised the dead he had known, and the living he loved, and the city that held them now. He promised as a man promises when he knows that the price will be dear and that he will pay it anyway, coin by coin. He promised to be made of oak and not break. He promised to learn to bend in a wind that had broken proud men for generations. He promised to keep the bread ovens lit and the swords sharp and the doors shut when they should be and open when they must be. He promised to be protector until what needed protecting could stand on its own feet and greet the morning without a man like him to hold its hand. Below, the streets darkened. Somewhere a singer took up a quiet melody for the dead king. Somewhere a child laughed and choked on a crumb and was tapped on the back by a careful hand until the breath came again. Somewhere in a cell a man with a wound as neat as an account bled and smiled and counted his remaining teeth. Somewhere in the holdfast a queen told her son a fierce old story about lions and the men who hunted them and what the lions did at the end. Somewhere on the deck of a ship that had come to anchor a man in black stared at a city and measured how much of it must be burned to leave anything that could be called clean. Ned stayed where he was until the lamps were lit one by one like new stars that thought for a moment that they were being born. He went inside. He began to write the words that would order the morrow, because words were what he had, and he had learned now how to make them be a sort of weapon that blood could not always answer. He sharpened his quill. He rubbed the ink between thumb and forefinger and thought of the smell of snow. He thought of doors and of hinge. And of the small, precise motion by which a man puts his hand in the right place and turns. He set his mind to the turning. He bent. He did not break. The city exhaled and inhaled around him as if it slept and woke and slept again, practicing for the day when it would need all its strength. The night took the heat away a little. The morning to come would bring it again, and bring with it a new set of faces at his door, and a new set of names that asked to be written onto the page where decisions live. He had always believed that honor chose a man that way, that it arrived as a knock when a man least wanted to hear it. Now he found that honor did not knock at all in a city like this. It simply arrived and made itself comfortable in a chair and asked what there was for breakfast. He smiled, unwilling and a little fond. He sat down. He began again.